carve out more balance throughout the other areas of your life. And if he doesn't want to hang out every single day, it doesn't mean he's not really interested. It doesn't mean he's not interested in the relationship. It actually just means he probably has less codependent patterns, which could actually be a long-term. I mean, I guess you said he's DA, but it's going to be important to find that middle ground and for you to become more interdependent by becoming more independent. And he's going to have to do the work to become more interdependent by becoming a little more dependent instead of hyper independent, if that makes sense, or counter dependent. So that's going to be an important cycle for you guys to go through. But as you initiate, Dawn, doing that work first, you're going to see that he actually comes this way naturally, because this is part of this like dynamic and the way we harmonize with another person we're in a relationship with. So great question. Okay. So, Boonamigo, how are you today? So Boonamigo says, oh my God, Thais, double FA, double drama over here. We had the exclusivity talk. I agreed to cancel my online dating profile, and we even joked about marriage. Then she ended the conversation very abruptly. I texted her and told her I just needed to know everything was okay. She told me she can't do this anymore and not to contact her. And my God, I feel like she will run into me. Wow. But it still hurts so bad. I'm so confused. What is going on and why the hot cold again? And telling myself she wanted to lock me in and then take back full control. What do you think? Yeah, sorry you're going through this. This is really tough. She sounds like she's very, very FA. And remember, we were saying this, was it yesterday we were talking about this? It's like another version of this in a way. We were saying how what often happens is when somebody is very FA, they start deactivating really hard around really large commitments. So, okay, we're talking about these more serious things, and it's like the agreement piece that really triggers FAs, because they can be connecting without all their wounds, but then the moment there's commitment towards exclusivity, towards a serious future, these different things, now there's things that can be broken. And now all the fears are going to come up, because it's like, okay, we're connecting, we're talking about the future. Oh my gosh, now all these fears are coming up because we've made this commitment, we've had these conversations, this could be broken, I could be disappointed, I could be let down or betrayed. And then the fears of that potentially happening, when a lot of this person's past programming says, this is what's happened, this is what did happen, they project that onto the situation, and now they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want you to make me feel like that, and they push you away as a means to protect themselves. She's doing it so much that I would almost be at the point, honestly, like my honest opinion would be, how much this is happening and how quickly it's happening and how extremely hot and cold it is tells me this person's not ready for a relationship. So, and I'm not trying to be disappointing, like I don't want to say, this is your worst case scenario here, but I mean, the patterns are pretty extreme here. So what I would do, Boonamigo, is I would get really clear right now. I would do the How to Heal from a Breakup course. I would not try to reinitiate. I do think she's going to come back around in a matter of days, quite honestly. And you want to prepare for that by doing some of the healing through going through the How to Heal from a Breakup course now, even though it's probably not a final breakup. And B, once you've done that, I want you to come up with a really important list of boundaries in terms of what you need in order for you to consider re-engaging the dynamic when she comes back around in a few days. Like, hey, this can't keep happening. Like, it's not appropriate. It's not okay for, we have these great conversations, and then all of a sudden you leave, and then all of a sudden you try to end it and push me away. Like, I understand you might be afraid. I understand you might be in pain, but this is not acceptable. So here are my boundaries. I would still love to continue with you if you're willing to work with me. And if you can't commit to some of these boundaries and do this work, then unfortunately I can't keep putting myself through this. That would sort of be the perspective I would take on, Boonamigo. So great question. And sorry to hear that you're being put through the big back and forth there like that. I know that's not an easy time or experience. So let me see where my cursor just was, because it just did a giant jump. Okay. Hello, Ramona. How are you? And should I start checking out the FA and DA courses? Not DA, just FA, Magni. Sorry, I just saw the second part of that. Okay. let me see. I'm going to answer 2 more questions and we're going to go into the next exercise here. Pushing myself to finish the course, feeling better with myself. That's so exciting, Merlin. Congratulations. Ruth, hello, Ruth. How are you today? Happy you're here. So I've taken the course, but I'm looking forward to doing it again live. Amazing. Awesome stuff. Hello, Yvette. How are you? You're so sweet, asking how everybody's doing. That's so nice. Hello, Kate. How are you today? So Kate says, hi, Thais. I am trying to consider myself more in my interactions with others. Love that. I love that you're saying I'm trying to consider myself more, right? Because just people pleasing is basically you not taking yourself into consideration. The idea of a sense of self or you and your needs and how you feel is out the window, right? So consider myself more, but I still make assumptions about how others expect me to act and people please. Any practical tips? Yes. Okay. Practical tip number 1. When you're around people, we were talking about this, I think maybe Jen asked this the other day or something. When we are around other people, what you want to do is you want to have some kind of anchor. So it's not going to come naturally, and that's okay. It's probably not going to come naturally as somebody anxious, preoccupied, or even FA with a strong anxious side to be tuned into yourself while you're around others. Why? Because part of your coping strategy for life has been, let me hyper be aware of how other people are feeling so I can understand and I can pivot my behavior to avoid abandonment or rejection. And so your whole life, your system and framework has probably been to focus on others, and it's not possible to be super focused on self and how I'm feeling and how I'm doing and what I'm needing and super focused on another person at the same time. Simultaneously, it's not possible. So what we're actually trying to work on is we're trying to get this skill of being able to go back and forth really quickly. Okay? Sounds really complicated when you start, becomes really easy and becomes like second nature, and it's actually how most secure people are operating naturally. So what we are trying to get to is, okay, how do I break some of the pattern? You probably go around groups of people or your significant other or a close friend or whoever it might be, and naturally abandon yourself quickly to get into their mindset about how they're thinking and what they're feeling. So we need an anchor. We need something to break that pattern up. And so an anchor can be just a behavior you assign that when you do that thing, you're going to check in with yourself. So we were talking about the other day, it could be every time you get up to go to the bathroom when you're at an event or at a family get together or whatever it might be. Every time you get to the bathroom, okay, I'm going to the bathroom, and I check in, I ask myself, how am I feeling? Is there anything I need right now? And if so, how can I get that need met? Or you can do every time you go get a glass of water, or every time you go get a bite of food, if there's a buffet, whatever it is. You have this anchor where it's like you ask, you check in, and you practice conditioning your mind to think that way. And once you feel like you're building some momentum there, then what you can start doing is while you're in a conversation, you can start practicing it. So once you're doing that natural and you have these little checkpoints every time you get up or every time you go to a new conversation, you check in, whatever it might be, once that's becoming a little more normalized, then you can start going, okay, every time I am in a conversation, while they're talking, just really quickly, I'm going to go, how am I feeling? Anything I need right now? And if you're like, no, I feel good. Or maybe you're going, you know what, I'm feeling tired. I think I need to leave soon. Okay, great. When will I leave? Like, how do I get that need met? Okay, I'm going to look. It's 9:30. I'm going to go by 10 o'clock. Like, you can do this in your dynamics and you'll get good at it as you start becoming clear about your own feelings and needs more repetitively by practicing using that anchoring system first. And once that becomes more normalized and integrated, because you're going to be good at getting your feelings and needs quickly in a matter of seconds, then you're going to be able to do that while you're going throughout your day. And another little practical tip in there is go through your needs list often. Check your needs, bring your needs list around, have a picture of it on your phone, check in at lunchtime, morning, evening, so that you're familiarizing yourself with your needs and the patterns in which they occur, so that it's not like you're going, what do I need? And it's this big open-ended question. You're already pretty familiar and it becomes easier to pull out an answer. So excellent question and great work. Hello, Susie Q. How are you? Hello, Lois. How are you? Hello, Julia and Glenn and Efrat. I hope you guys are having an amazing afternoon so far. Hello, Julia. That's wonderful that you're getting, inspired by art. And namaste, I saw your question. I know you know that now, but you did it perfectly. You posted well. Hello again, Merlin. And Jacko, how are you today? Okay, so Matthew, how are you? So Matthew says, as I am becoming more secure, I am noticing how I allowed myself, okay, very powerful, how I allowed myself to be taken advantage of in many ways, but mostly in relationships. Recently, I find myself feeling disappointed and hurt towards those that did and want to say something to them about it. But since I allowed this to happen without setting boundaries or stepping up, should I just continue to get to the root of why and setting boundaries? I'm not sure they would realize that they did or see it as taking advantage of someone. Yes. Okay. So really great question. This is a very normal part of the healing pattern coming from where you're coming from. And a really important awareness to have, right? What I would actually recommend doing in this order is number one, I would start by doing the very last module of the Releasing Resentment and Truly Forgiving course. You can do the whole course if you want. That actually be really beneficial too around this area. But I would definitely do the very last module, which is actually self-forgiveness, so that you see some of the the deeper dynamics at work. There's a process there that will help you to relieve some of that stress and tension. And then the second thing I would do is for the people close to you, it's important to have conversations, whether it's a conversation of you just setting boundaries more often and just saying, hey, I'm realizing there's certain boundaries I haven't set historically in the relationship. And so I'm going to be working on that and then doing that work. But what you are going to see for sure, and this is really interesting for everybody in here, the pain will go away and the resentment will go away exactly in unison for when you fully trust yourself to advocate for your own needs and set boundaries all the time. Because you won't, it's like that pain that exists, the re-traumatization cycle ends. And so when you trust yourself to be able to talk about anything at any point in time, express any need whenever you need to, and trust yourself to stay rooted enough in yourself to be a great advocate for your own needs, it becomes actually really difficult to resent people for those past dynamics. And you can do a little bit of work, and it's important to understand, we all teach people who we are and how to relate to us. And while there are some patterns of behavior, of course, that are inexcusable, like people consciously trying to manipulate and find ways to manipulate and capitalize on, exploiting somebody else or things like that, more often than not, a lot of dynamics and patterns in relationships, especially with AAs or FAs leaning AA, are that you show up as that people-pleasing person. That's how you teach people who you are. You love doing these things. You love this. You love that. You show up. That's the great guy that you are. And people get subconsciously imprinted by that. Any repetitive behavior that elicits an emotional response, that creates this imprint of who you are to another person. And then we all operate by navigating those imprinted systems and images and repeated behaviors and patterns we see from somebody else. That's like the subconscious story we have of that person. We learn to relate to that. And so that's why it's so important for us as individuals to learn to take ourselves into consideration, because if we don't, then we're going to be in a place where the way we are imprinting other people with who we are is something that actually hurts ourselves. And so if you set boundaries all of a sudden and then people are disrespecting them, or they're rude, or they fall off and they don't want to be your friend or things like that, then, that's probably not a great person to have in your life anyways. But if you do start setting boundaries and sharing more and communicating some of these things and showing up for yourself, and then people really love and care for you and show up back and are really warm and respect you and respect what you're doing with your boundaries, then chances are the person really never meant anything by it in the first place. It was just their pattern of how they knew how to relate to you, and that was just the dynamic that was there. And so it's a really kind of powerful shift we make in our relationships when we decide to change these patterns, because we'll see a lot of interesting things come out, and we'll learn a lot more about our relationships. And when we do this as well, and this is so profound for anxious preoccupieds also, is that we, as a human, you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel actually bonded to and understood. when you're people pleasing, you're not showing yourself to anybody. You're showing an image of yourself. And so of course your tank in terms of how much love or connection you receive from that external person is going to feel limited and like it's not filling up properly. Because you're not allowing yourself to receive proper love to begin with, because you're not allowing yourself to receive proper love. You're allowing some image of you to get love and attention, not who you truly are. And so you're going to be operating on a deficit just because you have that patterning being brought into your interpersonal relationships to begin with. So it's really important to recognize. And what a wonderful share, Matthew, really powerful. Okay, hello, Antonio. So I'm going to answer Antonio's question, and then I'm going to, an Ephrat, and then I'm going to go to the next exercise here. So Antonio says, hi, Thais and everyone. I have a question. I took the attachment quiz for a second time, and I'm a bit confused when comparing my results with the first attempt. First time I was AA primarily, followed by secure. Second attempt was secure, followed by FA. How can my strongest insecure attachment style turn from AA? Okay, hold on. First was secure, followed by AA. First time was AA primarily, followed by secure. Second attempt was secure, followed by FA. How can my strongest insecure attachment style turn from AA to FA? What should I focus on to work through? That's okay. You're probably just breaking codependency, and you're probably going more into your avoidance side and then testing for avoidance. What I would wonder is, do you have any trust wounds popping up? And if the answer is like not really, no, then you're just having more of an avoidance side develop. And as you self-report, and that's the problem with like any self-reporting, is there's going to be these interesting dynamics that pop out. You're probably reporting from a perspective of, again, you're protecting that relationship to yourself like a sapling, and you're like wanting to nurture it and have barriers around it so it doesn't get hurt. It's actually a great sign that your first is now secure, and then you have a little bit of an avoidance side, and you probably just still have a little bit of an anxious perspective there that's placing you in FA instead of more DA behavior. But I want you to check in to ask yourself, do I have a really big trust wound all of a sudden, or am I becoming volatile and pushing people away? And if the answer is no to both of those, then you're just having that anxious side still a little bit, with more of the avoidant developing, and that's what's landed you in that category. But the fact that secure bumped up and then this is happening tells me that that's probably not likely, the trust wounds and the volatility. So keep doing the anxious preoccupied work. And again, there's not going to be a whole lot to work on in terms of your avoidance side as a whole. That avoidance side will come back into equilibrium and be really balanced out when you're no longer having any anxious, and when you feel sustained and comfortable in your own ability to set boundaries, to speak up. And when you start trusting yourself to do that, you won't feel the need to protect yourself in that any longer. And then you'll actually go out into the world from a really healthy perspective and be able to have yourself and have other people in relationships simultaneously. And so that is the goal. Great question. Okay, so let's see. Efrat says you grand project PDS to help in the feeling of isolation. It's working here. Amazing. That is so nice. That's what we're hoping for. Thank you for sharing. Hello, Makor. How are you? Oh, sorry, I missed this part. Hi, Thais. Took the quiz last night again. 33 FA, 22 A, DA secure. Yeah, any input. Thank you. And I would just say, keep doing what you're doing, Julia. Like, keep doing you can do the repairing trust. I would do the post-traumatic growth course at some point as well. I think that'll be really powerful for you. But I know you're showing up. I know you're doing the work on a very regular basis, taking yourself into consideration. I know which courses you've done so far. I'm not sure if you've done the post-traumatic growth course. I would probably do that at this point. I think that'll be really, really beneficial. I would keep working to meet that need for security like we've talked about. And other than that, just keep plugging along the way you are, because you're seeing movement and showing up really, really well. So great job. Okay, so hello, Makor. Okay, I'm pausing at Jake's question. Awesome. Okay, so pausing there, and we're going to go into the next exercise. So if you pull your workbook back up and return to page 7, which is our I almost merged words, expectation inventory chart. Okay, so the purpose of this essentially overall is to get really clear about what some of the subconscious expectations are that you bring into a relationship and to really evaluate them from a conscious perspective. So what you're trying to do essentially is take a look at like, what are the patterns I bring in? Are these things healthy? What do I think somebody else's are? Where do I think the person I'm dating is coming from? Or, if you're single and you're reflecting on a past relationship, where do I think that person was coming from? And then to really consciously evaluate and ask yourself, well, what would be some healthy expectations to be carrying into this dynamic instead? Okay, so we're going to take a look, and I'm going to go through with you guys some really important components in here that are anxious preoccupied patterns so you can see. Okay, and I didn't leave a ton of room here. Again, the fillable version you should be able to type under, but you can write these on a lined piece of paper as well. You can put your expectations in that category, okay, in that column. So time from attraction to feelings, I want you guys to really evaluate what is your personal pattern in terms of how long it often takes you to go from feeling attracted to somebody to all of a sudden having feelings for somebody. And this is really important because it'll highlight, if you find yourself go, oh my gosh, I think I have feelings almost right away, then you are probably, without meaning to, sort of developing feelings for an image of somebody that your subconscious mind is sort of idealizing because it's trying to utilize that dynamic with that person as a strategy to get its needs met that it feels are profoundly unmet, or to heal its wounds that might be in there. So, because you have to imagine, it's very difficult you can have attraction to somebody for sure. You can find somebody attractive, and then you can think, oh, they look nice, or I like their confidence, or I like the way that they carry themselves, or whatever it might be that's attractive. And then you can go, I'm attracted to somebody. I feel this like really strong pull towards that person. Usually by the time you're at that point, it's because that framework, you have to understand, this is like so interesting. But you have to understand, if you feel attracted to somebody, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on beneath the surface at a subconscious level that you're not registering consciously. Remember, we talked about 1 billion bits of data per second versus our 40 to 60 of our conscious mind. Usually in that time period where you feel attraction to somebody or you're attracted to somebody, based on their mannerisms, their body language, what few exchanges you've had with them, the way they use language, the way that they, their tones, their micro expressions, all these different things have built in this imagined, not really imagined, but like built in this developed framework. I say imagined because your subconscious mind's probably pulling from associated patterns. So like, let's say, for example, you had an ex who acted a certain way and you really liked it, and then this person acts that way, you're going to start, the imagined is that you're probably at a subconscious level then filling in some of the blanks, like, oh, they're like my ex in this area and I really like that, so they also must be this, this, and this, because the brain's an association making machine. This is what it does. And so you have all this stuff in a very short period of time that builds out this entire framework of what you think about a person, okay? And a lot of associations, like little light bulbs, are going off at a subconscious level, kind of like this big paradigm that's happening, and all these associations are popping up, and you're forming very, very quickly a full image about a person in a matter of seconds, that continues to expand and grow over more and more time as more and more seconds and minutes pass. And then you might feel an attraction, right? Where then you want to talk to them or pursue them or go towards them or whatever it is, because your subconscious basically has had a lot more positive than negative associations triggered and activated, okay? Now, what often happens with anxious, preoccupied individuals is then they go, oh, I have feelings. And they confuse often attraction with feelings, or in a very short period of time. That may not be for everybody, but maybe at the end of a first date or second date. And what you want to be consciously aware of is that, part of like real romantic feelings, not limerence, not attraction, not infatuation, but feelings developing require like really knowing the person when we talk about the context of like having feelings. And that means knowing a little bit of their inner world, not knowing all the formed associations that have been activated because of knowing a little bit about some of their surface world, right? Feelings come from vulnerability, sharing, knowing the person's history, knowing some of their dynamics, some of these things that come out of getting to more deeply see and hear and understand a person. And so sometimes anxious preoccupied will have the feelings that are actually more so, or a lot, maybe majority so, attraction. They confuse and intertwine the two. And then they want to move very quickly in a relationship. And this becomes really self-defeating and often disappointing when somebody's moving very differently. Okay, we can compare that to a dismissive avoidant, for example, where they have attraction, and then when they start feeling things, they have negative associations triggered in that little subconscious paradigm, because a lot of their associations with feelings and vulnerability and getting to know somebody's internal world were not good growing up. It was like, oh, that got me neglected and I felt bad and abandoned and rejected. And so then they can be diminishing, and you can have two polar opposite subconscious expectations for how quickly to move along a relationship, for how quickly to start expressing your feelings, for how quickly to communicate, what's come up for you in that dynamic. And so the more we can be aware of this, and the more we can consciously kind of guide ourselves along this process, because we go, okay, I'm feeling a lot of attraction. That means there's probably a lot of subconscious comfort zone stuff in here, a lot of needs this person's meeting or has the promise of meeting, or a lot of traits that I've repressed that they're expressing. And that trait variety is a very biologically attractive feature. The more you see all of that, then you can kind of regulate it. And you can also go, okay, I shouldn't necessarily expect Bob to move as quickly as I do, because I know that his attachment style is almost the opposite. And where I'm having all these positive associations triggered, the more he develops feelings, he's probably having some competing negative associations crop up. And it can help us to have like a more rooted stance and awareness in terms of what to expect in relationships, how quickly things should move. And then we can use this awareness to then communicate and to ask questions and to open a dynamic, and not personalize things and not story tell around things, and not get lost in sort of a dynamic as it's moving along. So that is going to be really important. Now, when it comes to contact, that's going to be kind of an offspring of the natural expectations there. Ask yourself, how much do I expect a person to be in contact with me each and every week or each and every day? For anxious preoccupied, a big subconscious expectation they tend to carry is, oh, we should talk all day, every day. And when I ask a lot of anxious preoccupied people historically, well, what do you think is healthy? What do you think is like the average or the norm? Or what do you think two secure people would be? Most of the answers I get are, I don't know, maybe touch base like 2 or 3 times a day, not necessarily all day, every day. And that's true, like touching base a little bit here and there, because what we don't want is we don't want to lose our sense of self to anything. We want to be able to have new things that come into our sense of self and that are a beautiful benefit and create harmonious interrelations with our sense of self, but we don't want to lose our sense of self to anything. And what can take place, of course, is, imagine if you're talking to somebody all day, every day, you're thinking about them or you're texting them. It takes a little bit of time for us to get fully present and ingrained and into flow state with what we're doing, whether it's at work, whether we're at dinner with a friend, whether we're spending time with our children, whatever it might be. And so if we're constantly interrupting that with another person, you can bet that this person's starting to bleed into your sense of self. And this isn't actually something we want for a secure relationship to take place. So by shifting our expectations around how much we want to be in contact with somebody, and even if we have like a compromise where we go, okay, not all day, every day, but maybe twice in the morning, once in the afternoon, and a call in the evening before bed, whatever it might be, then we also don't personalize so much when somebody doesn't text back and forth with us all day. And we don't fall down that rabbit hole of taking every gap in a text back as a rejection, especially when we can get clear about what the other person's programming is like, see them more for who they truly are, instead of something that all humans do, which is a very painful dynamic, is we try to play God. We try to go, everybody should be behaving exactly how I expect them to be behaving at all times. And if they don't, then I start telling a really painful story about myself, or I start getting mad at that person, right? I was sharing with somebody recently that I, as a person, sort of play this like psychological game with myself sometimes, where if I find myself get frustrated at something, maybe I'm like at a rush in a rush at the grocery store. Maybe let's pretend I'm late for an appointment. And I go, oh my gosh, why is that person taking so long to find their credit card or whatever it is when they're going to pay in front of me? You have to check yourself and go, who am I as a human to think like, oh, this person in front of me should be, moving as quickly as I expect them to. And everybody around me, in fact, should be moving more quick. Like we do this as human beings. We go, this should be happening. That person shouldn't have cut me off. Who are we to say, oh, everybody should drive perfectly around me all the time? Like, that's like, I am God and I rule everybody and everything. And it's a very narcissistic thing. All humans do it. But it's a really powerful thing to practice checking yourself with that, because when we stop putting expectations on people's behaviors that we don't know or in dynamics that we have, we're free to actually see people as people. We're free to empathize with people instead of sympathize. We're free to more deeply understand people and obviously more deeply bond with them and connect with them as a result. And we save a lot of friggin' wasted time on that game that the subconscious mind likes to play. We get part of that game as a large result of the punishment reward system and how we're all socialized, and that's its own topic of conversation, but it's a powerful thing. And when anxious, preoccupied individuals apply this to contact and how frequently they're communicating with somebody, you free yourself of a lot of like, why isn't she texting me back? Why hasn't he talked to me yet? And he should be by now. He shouldn't be living life according to what I expect of him or her, right? Like we want to break out of that because it doesn't do anything for anyone, especially not ourselves. So we can look at that. We can look at what we think would be healthy. And then when we're waiting or we're worrying, we can remind ourselves, hey, it's okay that it's been 2 hours since I haven't been in contact. It's actually healthy for this to happen. And it doesn't mean anything about how this person feels about me. If anything, it just means that we have different programmed expectations of how often to communicate to begin with. Now, this isn't mutually exclusive to like having somebody who never contacts you and then you putting up with it. That's not what I'm saying here at all. But we can regulate our expectations by being conscious and doing this work ahead of time. Okay. Then this goes into time spent together. We're going to apply those same rules. Commitment in general, how quickly we make a commitment. We're going to check in with ourselves, what we think according to the other person's programming, what they might expect. Knowing this or asking questions to that person about this allows us to facilitate healthier conversations. It allows us to be more direct. It allows us to compromise more effectively between our set of programs and another person's. And a really important question in here is our expectations of ourselves. If you're the anxious, preoccupied, how much pressure do I put on myself in a relationship? How much, do I expect myself to people please or be perfect or not show any weakness or vulnerability? Like, where are you putting pressure and expectations? And then, of course, any general expectations of the relationship as a whole. Okay, so this is that exercise. We're going to leave off on exercise 4. I'm going to come back in, try to get to 2 more questions before 3:30. And I hope this all makes a lot of sense so far. This is all very important stuff to become aware of in this dynamic, okay? And then any Q&As. I don't get to jump into the next one with the open Q&A and post your questions in there in a moment. So the next question, so Jake says, I used to be one of those people who was overwhelmed by the courses, but I think the important point is recognize you'll get through what you can, when you can. It's not a race, but a beautiful journey. That's so beautiful. I love that. And I absolutely agree. And our job isn't to like push ourselves when we don't feel like doing it. Our job is to honor ourselves in the process and tune into ourselves and check in and all of that. So I love that. That was a beautiful, beautiful comment. Thank you for sharing. Hello, Natalie. How are you? So Natalie Karaman says, hello, everyone. I was in the wrong webinar. Oh, no. Oh, you thought your membership ended earlier. You might have been the one at 3:30 instead of the one at 2 o'clock. But we're so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Okay, let me see. Hello, Ben. How are you? Let's see. I want to get 2 more questions, and if I can, it might just be one. I think I totally sucked at self-reporting, by being totally ignorant and with some unaware as to my behavior in relationships. Interesting. Yeah, self-reporting is tough, especially before we know anything. I really, really don't think that, I wouldn't, yeah, I guess ignorance like a fair word, because it's like just a lack of awareness, really. I was going to say be gentle in your language to yourself, but that's a fair word. I think when we literally just don't know what's going on in a dynamic, but that's where self-reporting is so funny. And then I would say fearful avoidants tend to know that they have an insecure attachment style. They often feel relieved when they're like, oh my gosh, there's a word for what I feel. But people who are a little anxious or a little dismissive, but still rooted in those, often self-report, I find, as being secure. I've seen so many times people come into couple sessions with me historically, and one person's like, my wife is definitely the anxious one. And then, the husband's for sure dismissive, and he like, oh, no, like it's all her, only to come to find, or vice versa. For sure. Like, my husband's so dismissive, only to come to find that there's a big anxious piece in there. So it's interesting for us to take into consideration and to notice. Let's see. Yeah, absolutely. Would love to know if there might be more FAs in these parts of the world. Okay, wait, hold on. Let me read okay, that's to Natalie. Interesting about men and women. I did research saying there are big cultural differences in many parts of the world. There are hardly any DAs. That's so interesting. I wonder where that would be. Would love to know if there might be more FAs in these parts of the world. To be honest, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure where there would be hardly any DAs. If you have a link on that, will you send that? I'd love to read about that. And more FAs in these parts of the world. It'd be so hard to say. Like, some of the ideas I would think of is maybe in a sense that there's more emotional. There are more emotional challenges in probably the Western parts of the world. Whereas I would say wherever there are more physical challenges, more like day-to-day survival type challenges, I would definitely think you're going to see more dismissive avoidance, because there isn't room to emotionally nurture people when we're in survival mode. And so I could see maybe more FAs, but I don't have enough information about that in terms of different parts of the world and which attachment styles we see there. But I'll definitely research it. I'm so interested now. It's such a powerful question. So we'll definitely check it out. Okay, so, and yeah, very exciting. So the last one, it's 3:31. Okay, so I had a therapist tell me my significant other is extremely avoidant with some disorganized or BPD and PD traits. We only made it through a couple of sessions. Can one be DA with FA leaning? Yes, absolutely. And if someone's DA with FA components, they could land in like more NPD type territory than BPD, though, for sure. BPD, you're definitely going to see an anxious side, because one of the markers of BPD is this strong fear of abandonment. So good for you for going to therapy. I think that's wonderful. Sorry to hear that you're in a challenging dynamic, but keep showing up, keep doing the work on yourself here, keep healing, keep going to therapy. And if you do realize this is an unhealthy dynamic, then you have to honor your boundary if you see things are not moving. But you're definitely doing everything right in the meantime. So I'm going to jump on to the next one. And thank you all so much for being here. I can't believe how fast these go by every single time. I feel like it's been 20 minutes. But a huge hello to everybody who I see popping in at the end. Miranda, Rochelle, hello. I said, and Michelle. Let's see who else is in here that I didn't get to say hi to. Okay, no, I'm getting distracted. I will see you guys in the next webinar for the 3:31, the open Q&A. Have an amazing rest of your day, guys. I will see you shortly. Bye. Hello. How is everybody doing? Happy Friday for a lot of you guys. It's so nice to see everybody. Hello to Rosa and Soaring Davis. Hello, welcome. Natalie, how are you? Mel, Rochelle, how are you guys? So a couple of quick announcements. I won't go into it too much right now, but a few are: number one, we're going to have an announcements board up very soon, which is very exciting. Number two, our Overcoming Rejection and Social Anxiety course will be coming out any day now, so stay tuned for that. Number three, we are going to be opening up our January social routines and events still. One thing I wanted to touch on is these have been in really, really high demand, which I think is fantastic, and I'm so excited about. But one thing that's happening is sometimes people are booking and then they're reserving the slot, so people can't actually go in and access and have new slots, and then not coming. So just do me one favor. It's totally okay if you can't come, but if you are not able to make it, try to unbook your slot. I don't know who it is or anything like that. I'm not trying to like call anybody out, but I've just been told that that's happening from our team members. And then there's a lot of people that want to join, and so if you can, make sure that you unbook your slots, just so that other people can jump in there. And then again, we're gathering sort of final feedback from everybody, and then we're going to be adding some more very shortly. So they won't just be booked up till January, but actually we'll have more throughout December that will be additional. So stay tuned for that. Today we're doing our Advanced Anxious Preoccupied workbook. We've left off at exercise. I was just going through them. I believe exercise 4. Yes, we left off at exercise 4 on the top of page 9. So if you can, make sure that you print off your workbook so you can follow along, or feel free to pull it up, and as long as you click download, you now will have the fillable version available. So you can go in there and you can actually fill it out on your computer, which we're really excited about. So check that out as well. And then our course for next month that we're going to be coming out with, and we're going to try to do one course for next month, because a lot of the feedback we're getting is that it feels like there's an overwhelming amount of content, which is probably me, because I love creating content and like pushing it out and being like, oh, I'm going to share this, and I have all these ideas all the time. So I'm going to settle down a little bit, give you guys a chance to feel a little more integrated, and also we're going to do a little bit of additional stuff on the user experience. So on that announcement board, for example, I'm going to have a weekly video that just gives you some tips in there, just for our members, just to say, look, here, don't pressure yourself. Don't stress about how much you get done. Just be consistent, show up for yourself, these sorts of things. So I'll put in like a little bit of an encouragement on a weekly basis in there. And we're going to design it so that we can section off the courses a little bit differently, and update our course guide, all that kind of stuff. So you really have this framework. And if anybody has feedback in terms of where they get stuck, please keep in mind, we do have that course guide. So if you're like, what courses do I do in what order? But we also have a lot of people at this point who've been here for a very long time and who've completed all the courses on the course guide. And so we're going to create like once you're starting to really feel secure, here are some follow-up courses based on your attachment style, and coming out of that attachment style, and what to do in which order. So we're going to have that extra support system for people who've already completed those first 8 to 10 courses and want to keep expanding out and want some more guidance there. So lots of exciting things always happening and growing. Another thing we're doing for user experience, and again, it's going to take a while to build out, but we're in the very, very early stages of building out an app so that you'll have reminders on your phone, you'll have check-ins, you'll have the ability to, again, this is long-term, but you'll have the ability to have a self-soothing part. So like, oh, something came up for you, you'll be able to type and go through the emotional processing tool in the app. You'll have webinar reminders. You'll be able to download and just listen to the audio from webinars, all these different things. So that is all the exciting stuff coming up. So what I will do is I will answer the first 3 or 4 questions in here. Good evening, Natalie. I wonder where you are. I didn't realize it was evening for you. And for some reason, I thought you were in California. So pull this up. I'll answer the first 3 or 4 questions, and then we'll dive right into some of the exercises. And we're going to talk a lot about the dating phase, protest behaviors, coping mechanisms, the honeymoon phase, some things that come up, really making sure that you have a strong sense of self-identity as the anxious preoccupied, because this is going to save you so much stress long-term. And a few quick tweaks can make a really big difference. So we're going to talk about all of this today. So Rosa is the first question. How are you, Rosa? It's so nice to see you. So you said, my daughter is being covertly bullied in school. A girl is giving her nasty looks when my girl tries to speak to her. This is going on for years. My daughter hit her as she said, my daughter hit her as she had enough and is now in trouble as mom of girl has called it assault and unprovoked. My daughter is so stressed she took the day off school. She's 10. How can she deal with someone leaving her out, dismissing her, as she really wants to be friends with everyone? The other girl is saying she punched her. She really wants to be friends with everyone. The other girl is saying she punched her, and my daughter is very upset. She had already immediately apologized to the girl for hitting her. How can we deal with someone who is being really clever about bullying someone? The girl was caught excluding my daughter by a teacher a few years ago, but nothing much happened, and she continues to be mean to my DD. Thanks, Thais, for any insight. Okay, sorry to hear that your daughter's going through that, and I know as a parent, it's like very challenging to not just take it all on and really, really feel so much concern and just want to sort of fix and control everything. And I've seen a lot of people go through that over the years, and I know it's a tough challenge. So, number one, there's a few things in here. So, number one, there's a wound, right? Your daughter has a big wound to the point where it caused like that output of behavior. I absolutely do not agree with covert bullying or bullying of any form, and I think that has to be addressed and acknowledged, and I think that has to be held space for with your daughter. But at the same time, that's not an appropriate response, right? To physically lash out. So, and what that tells you really is that there's a whole buildup there of resentment and pain that obviously was probably touching some kind of core wound. So there's a few layers in here to sort of unpack. So layer number one, you want to validate your daughter's feelings. Like, obviously, for somebody to do that, they felt so much pain. And as a 10-year-old, your prefrontal cortex isn't developed and you don't have the same impulse control and all these different things. So what that tells you really clearly is like, there's a lot of pain going on there. So number one, I would really make space for that, which it sounds like you're sort of doing in the first place. But if you want like a specific structure for it, validate her feelings. Okay, I see that you were in so much pain that caused that. I see that there was a lot of hurt there and that was happening. I see that you felt probably helpless and out of control because you had this person doing this to you for years and it just came to this tipping point. So you want to have that ability to empathize with her because you're really showing her to be able to empathize and humanize herself. And at the same time, that can't be mutually exclusive to like accountability and boundaries, right? So you want to start with that. Then you want to go into, well, before you even go to the accountability part, you really want to go into inquiry, like really trying to understand it. And not because necessarily you need to understand it as a parent perfectly, but you need to help her to understand herself. Right? So then I would go into inquiry and I would say, what led up to that? What were you feeling? What about the situation? Like, we can fill in the blanks, but we're never going to have the perfect awareness of exactly what the core wounds are by just filling in the blanks. So, because you might go, oh, she was really upset. But as you unpack it with her, you might find, she has a huge pain point around feeling weak. And that's what led to it. She was like, I'm tired of feeling like I just put up with stuff and that's it. Or she might have a huge pain point or a core wound around feeling excluded. And maybe there's been a history of that in other circumstances, or maybe there's a painful memory in kindergarten she went through. Like, there can be so many different things. And that's why you want to ask. Okay. And then number three, based on that core wound that you hear or that huge like underlying pattern, it'll be really important to do some work around that story with her. So if she thinks that she's disliked or she's not lovable or she's not, I guess you wouldn't feel that way with kids so much, but like not likable with peers or whatever it might be, whatever the huge pain point or maybe a couple pain points in there are, you want to help her tell the opposing story repetitively and see evidence for it so that she's reprogramming that wound within herself. And that will be you addressing and helping to address within her the root cause of what led to that painful behavior. The more intense the behavior, the more painful the underlying root is. Okay. So that will be the first step. And then you want to have an accountability component. So we've empathized, we've humanized, we've seen the pain, we've held space for it, we've inquired, we've sought to understand what's really happening so we can address the root. We have a path for compensating with that root, helping her tell a new story, helping her see herself in a new light to help reprogram that. And then we move into the accountability component. So we look at like, hey, what was the cost? What happened? And it sounds like she's already apologized, and she's probably, it sounds like she's really stressed, but she'll actually feel a sense of relief by having a plan in place, a strategy. Like, hey, what do you do next time if this happens? It's okay to make mistakes. You're a child, you're going to grow up, you're going to go through things like this. What's the plan for next time? What do we do in the future? What does that look like? If you're feeling that amount of pain, what can you do? If she feels like she has a control strategy to deal with that, not only does she get accountability for that, and she has a plan in place, and she has a better solution going into the future, but she'll feel a sense of relief, like, oh, okay, I have a form of control now. I know what I can do. And then, I would address with the teachers and if the conversation's coming up, I would say, this is what's been happening. Here's where it's coming from. We talked about it. We did the work around it. I'm realizing this is a component. And ultimately, the more she has those pain points relieved, and those core wounds reprogrammed over time, the more comfortable she's going to feel connecting and doing all these different things anyways, even if somebody's being a bit of a not so great person, like somebody sort of bullying and doing stuff like that. Ultimately, if she doesn't have those wounds in place, she'll be able to handle that with more resilience and just handle it more effectively. So those are some really good first steps to take. And thank you for sharing that. And I hope she's okay. I think it's hard too when we're kids. We think everything's like the biggest deal ever and it's impossible to recover from. But one day she'll probably be this really beautiful grown adult, and she's got a mother who's helping her and is going to help her navigate this from a more conscious perspective and give her these great habits. And one day you and her will get to look back and sort of laugh at like, oh, this thing happened. I can't believe you did that when you were 10 years old. And sort of hopefully joke about it and see all the beautiful things and the growth and the awareness and learning that came from it, as long as you stick to that path. So great share. Okay, so Soaring Davis, hello, how are you? So Soaring Davis says, hello, I hope all who celebrated Thanksgiving had a good day, and those who didn't, I hope you had a good day too. That's so sweet. Yeah, happy belated Thanksgiving to everybody. I guess it's still like Thanksgiving weekend. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I think I went to school in the US. I was there for like almost 7 years. But I forget how the Thanksgiving is different in Canada. We have like one day, it's in October, that's it. So interested to hear. I guess, is it Thursday and Monday that you do it? Anyways, happy Thanksgiving to everybody still. Okay, so Rochelle says, just a quick feedback. The Zoom calls are a great way for me to practice the exposure work